Hey guys, welcome. So today I'm going to be making some patio furniture out of some normal wood that you can find at Home Depot. 2x4s would be totally fine. I've got some 2x12s as I decided these were going to be the straightest pieces I can get. I'm going to mill them down to the size that I need. I'm still going to be working basically 2x4 dimensions, so I'm going to mill them down to a 3.5 inch. I can get 3 out of each piece of this long ways. First I'm going to be hitting them on the miter saw behind me here, which is set up, and then I'm going to chop them down to my pre-set up measurements that I've already figured out. I've got a little sketch that I came up with, the measurements I'm going to be using for the size that I'm creating. So I'm going to create a two-seater sofa and then 2 matching chairs. I've got some cushions that's going to match it as well. And otherwise I'm just going to start chopping it down with the miter. Then I will run them through the table saw for those 3 matching pieces. And then otherwise I've got some just normal Dexmate screws I'm going to be using. Ultimately, the goal with this project is I want to take some standard lumber that you can find at Lowe's or Home Depot, make some nice patio furniture, and see if we can sell it on Marketplace. So first steps, go ahead and chop these down. So with the little diagram that I came up here with what I'm going to build, I've also pre-lined out all my measurements. I've also gone ahead and made a cut list. So I'm just going to be going through each of these cuts. Based on my math here, it should be a little over 5 of these 2x12 by 8s, but knowing that I got to try and knock out all of these pieces, long ones and short ones, I got to kind of map them out. You want to make sure you don't have any wasted lumber. I'm still going to end up having a little bit of waste because it's impossible to be perfect. Some of these pieces are going to be 44 inches long, leaving me about 52 inches after that, and then trying to divide that into some of these other pieces isn't necessarily going to work, but we'll just do as best we can with as little waste as possible. All right, everything's chopped down to the pre-described length. Now I'm gonna rip them down to the 3.5 inch on the table saw. Got everything set up to go ahead and run them all through at the same time. And then I'm gonna put everything through the planer just to make sure everything's all cleaned up and nice to be used for furniture. So I've got everything chopped down from my cut list, ready to go. From here, I could go ahead and start putting the furniture together. I'm gonna be sanding anyways, but this next step, I'm gonna go ahead and actually run it through the planer. This isn't necessary. This is just gonna get it a little bit nicer finish. Some of this wood, since it's just normal lumber, is gonna have bigger pockets and stuff. It'll help take some of those out versus just sanding it. And again, this is just what I'm choosing to do. I want a really nice finish. I am gonna be probably staining these a few different colors as I'm tossing out batches. You could totally just sand the wood and it would still do a really nice rustic finish there. But again, I'm gonna go ahead and plane them. All right, so I've got all the pieces chopped to my cut list, ready to start building. I've already built this one. I've got my measurements, back out my diagram just to make sure that I remember which pieces are going where. And then I've got my tape measure, of course, just so I could keep everything straight because I've just got them in piles right there and they're all pretty close in sizes. But what I'm doing here is using a Craig pocket hole. And it's just a super simple one. It's like 35 bucks or something, I think. But it works really well. And what I'm doing as I'm building it is putting the screw holes in a spot that's gonna be hidden. So as you can see here, this rail right here where you can see these pocket holes, this is gonna be on the inside of the chair, so you're not gonna see them. They'll be under the railing there. For in here, under this piece, I put the holes underneath, and then I have 2 coming up right here. And then I have one from there and one from under here. All so that I can cause it to not show up from anywhere outside the chair. So going for a no screw look on this one, but I've made them with the screws as well showing, and I think that looks good as well. But for this one, I just want to use basically as clean as I can make it. Again, you're just kind of as you go, making them hidden as best you can. So from here, I just got to repeat the process. I'm going to be taking all of these, building 2 full chairs and then the sofa. So I've got to make 6 of these arm pieces. And again, verifying which ones are which. And then once you get a pattern down, everything will start to speed up. But with the Craig, it's super simple. Just mount it like so. Then we're going to repeat that on the other side. As far as the screws go, I'm just using Dexmate screws for this. Outdoor style screws because this is going to be outdoor furniture. I'm not using the fancy Craig screws. These work just fine. They will go right in there with no problem. That's what I've already used on that side. So otherwise I'm going to drill down the rest of these holes, put the rest of these arms together, and then we'll move on to putting the chairs together. All right, and for this one, putting that screw hidden under here and then up high on this part because this is going to go under that arm. So if you're down below the chair, you would see it, but from up above, you're not going to see that one. And then clearly from down here, you're not going to see it. And my Craig tool does not fit on this. So just using another clamp, line everything up. All right, like so. Now I have all the pieces to put together. So I'm just setting them up like this on my workstation. Line up the end. And for this, to make sure everything stays together, I'm using my bench and a clamp and just attaching everything together like so. So when I go to put these screws in, nothing is fighting each other. You can really fix the square once you get to the other one as well. Okay, and then I'm using a clamp here just to make sure it stays in line side to side there. And with the Craig pocket hole screws, you definitely want to make sure that you use a test piece when you measure out the depth of the screw hole, the pocket, and then the depth the screw is going to go, because otherwise it could totally pop out the other end. So once you get everything set up, you should be good to go as long as you don't overdrive it, and otherwise it's just putting them in. Just testing for square and tightness here in the middle. I can shave off anything that hangs over on these with the sander and really finish everything out nice. The important thing is I want this middle to be all squared up, as that's not something that I can sand in place, and I don't want to do any filler or anything like that. You totally use some wood glue in between each of these joints as well to really lock them in place. I'm not doing that on this one, but it is an option. And then you want to account for which arm is which. Make sure you're making 2 opposite sides, as this piece will be set in on one and not on the other. And then I want to make sure that these pockets are hidden on the inside of that part. Again, using a clamp to get everything lined up perfectly before I drive those screws. So one from underneath on each side. All right, and then for this part, requires some measuring, as this one's got to be set inside the middle there. So this is going to be the height of the base where the cushion's going to sit. Or if you're not doing a cushion, then using another clamp here. That part actually takes the longest out of everything, just to make sure everything squares up. All right, so there's 2 arms. Now it's got the other 4 to do. I'm gonna go ahead and knock them out and we'll get the chairs put together. All right, so for assembling, I've got 2 of the chair legs set out here, and then I've got all of my middle bracing sections. They're all 22 inches for mine, as that's the typical width of a cushion that you can find online. It's 22 and 24, sometimes in between, but 22 is really common, so went ahead with that. And then otherwise, I'm gonna go ahead and brace the front one here and then top one in the back, just to get a solid structure to start putting the rest in. And otherwise, when I drill the holes, for the most part, I can go ahead and drill them all the same, as they're all gonna be hidden from either inside or underneath, with the exception of the back. There's no real good way to hide pocket holes on that. Unless you know you're gonna have a cushion, then you could put them all on the inside of the cushion there. But if you don't use a cushion, you would still want them not to be on the front of the chair, so making it where only the back of the chair is a good spot to hide it. So like I did on the bracing here on the side, we could totally do one from underneath the board and then one from the top, where you're only gonna see 1 pocket hole per board on the back. And it's only gonna be 2 of those braces in the back. So that might be what I end up doing. We'll see as I get to that point. All right, for attaching the pickets, the easiest thing is gonna be laying down one side, attaching each basically to one side. I'm still gonna use a clamp to hold everything tight in place, as I just don't want that wood grain or the screws or anything funky to be the reason that I miss the hole and cause anything to be unaligned. And you wanna square them up with any other rails that are gonna be going, of course. I just wanna keep everything from moving as much as I can. So the more clamps you have available, the better. You could get away with not using the clamps, but use them if you got them, right? All right, so on this one, I am gonna go ahead and do 1 on top and 1 under. And I just realized there's an ugly knot on both of those spots. So we're gonna do the opposite side. Screws and nails and stuff don't typically agree with the knots. So with this one, I'm gonna have the screw facing on the outside, just in case cushions are used. And this one has that excess from the rail that I plan to sand off. So I gotta make sure I account for that with squaring it up. All right, set this aside. Get this one down. And then reverse it. All right, so I've got all the holes pre-drilled on my pickets. They're gonna go in here, and then one on the back. I've got this one currently pinned up with a clamp. And then I do have to measure these. So these ones are perfectly 2 1/4 in between each here. And then I'm planning about 1 inch in between each picket. Over here, I will have to measure those as I go. I know I want to have one picket start right next to the front of the chair, and then I'll be spacing them 1 inch thereafter. The last gap isn't that big of a deal because you're not really going to be sitting there, so more so the flow up front. Now it's just a matter of attaching them and using the clamps where I need to. All right, and there's the first one. They look pretty good. Definitely square, not a lot of shape to them, but otherwise I just got to put one more chair and then the sofa together, and then we could throw some cushions on them and take a look. All right, so all three are done. I've got the sofa up here and 2 chairs below. Now it's just on to sanding. I'm gonna be rolling over these edges, just using a sander. You could certainly use a router. I'm gonna be using just a sander, just to give a nice soft edge, so that way when your arms or elbows or anything hit these, they're not gonna hurt. Definitely got to sand down any of the end grains as well, just to make sure those get a nice smooth finish there. So I'm gonna get it down to like a 220 grit for a final piece there, and then it'll be ready for staining. I'm not gonna take it any further than that because it is outdoor furniture. For any of the higher spots or anything that I need to really get down, like the deeper edges that I need to knock off, I'll be using a 40, 60, possibly to knock those down a little quicker, and then I'll get them up to the 220. So here we go. All right, so I got everything put together and sanded. Now it's ready for the stain. I got 2 chairs here and a sofa. And for the stain itself, I'm just gonna use this Varathane oil-based stain, looking to get a gray kind of look for it. I did do a test piece just to verify the look was close to what I wanted, and then we'll see how it comes out. Hopefully I don't have to do any additional sanding to get the color I want, but I think this is gonna come out right there where we need it. I'm just gonna apply it with a paintbrush, wipe it off immediately and let it dry, and then we'll see what we got. All right, and as usual, I've got a piece of Coroplast here. I just use this to catch glue or whatever. I'm gonna be using it to catch the stain. So as you can see, very used. But otherwise, I'm just gonna be putting it under each piece. I've got several pieces of Coroplast, so as I get these things set up, just so I'm not putting it on the concrete or on my bench or anything else, I don't want to get that stain everywhere. I'm just going to be utilizing that as a way to catch that. So I'm putting it on pretty liberally, and then I'm just wiping it off immediately after. And it's leaving a pretty nice tone. Appears to be keeping the reds that are kind of in this fur, and then the white parts are really taking on that gray. So I think it's gonna look really nice for what we want. And with those green cushions, I think it's gonna look good. Right, it can be a little daunting because when you see this, it looks like a lot of gray, but it is not that bad once you wipe it away. So it goes on pretty thick, and then you just wipe it off immediately, get a nice light tone there. Again, you want to try and get one whole section at a time, because otherwise if you reapply it to the same spot, you're going to end up darkening that section a little bit more. So a little bit's okay, and as long as you blend it in, but you want to try and do one whole section at a time, so you're not having to go back over. Definitely with the legs, you want to do those while it's standing up, so you're not getting a bunch of pooling here at the bottom. I'll have to catch all that. And then the longer you let it sit on here, the deeper it's going to go, the darker it's going to be. So take that into account, how dark you want it to be with any stain. You can always apply more later. And of course you could sand some back if needed, but that's a lot of work if you go that route. All right, so that first one's done, and then I got 2 more to do. All right, and I've got the finished product now. So I've got the 2 chairs sitting up here. I've got the sofa, the love seat that I'm sitting on. And I did apply that gray stain. I didn't do more than 1 coat, though I didn't do it very meticulously. So some spots might have gone over previously touched spots. If you're very sensitive of what the color is going to turn out to be, you want to make sure you're doing an entire surface all at once. For me, I was kind of flipping them around as I was doing it. For the stain I did use that Varathane. I used the Weather Oak. One of the things you want to make sure you're careful about when you're applying stain is that you're stirring it consistently throughout your project as you're staining. If it settles at all, you're going to get more coloring into certain spots, and so as you're dipping that brush, you can pick up more of a dark tint to it. As you can see, these chairs came out a little bit lighter, and then I've got a little bit darker here. And some of that could just be the wood grain itself, how different parts of the wood took the stain, whether it was drier in certain spots. But certainly, if you're not stirring your stain consistently, it can cause a darker tint as well. But I went ahead and applied it and wiped it away really quickly so I didn't get too dark of a color. Had I left this any longer, it would continue to darken, of course. You could even apply more coats and it would darken more, so you could do little at a time. But this is an oil-based stain that I used here. I went ahead and let it dry for a full 24 hours to make sure that it cured entirely, and that's what it says on the directions here, as well as the sealer that I used. And I just used this Helmsman by Minwax. This one's pretty awesome because it's an indoor and outdoor. So rather than having to have one for outdoor projects and indoor projects, this one's pretty great. And I've used it for many indoor projects, outdoor projects, of course. I've used the Varathane as well. It's about the same price, but you got to have one for indoor and outdoor. I think the quality seems exactly the same to me. I didn't notice any difference personally. This is a water-based polyurethane, and so this is where that full 24-hour dry time is important with that oil-based, because I swapped from that oil-based stain to a water-based clear coat, and that's just what the instructions say, so make sure you follow it to make sure that this sticks correctly. If it's oily at all, it's basically saying that this might not adhere, so just make sure you pay attention to the instructions on what you're using. And so I applied this with my airless sprayer, just a cheap one that I've gotten from Harbor Freight. I've got a video out there as well, you can check out my review on that, kind of like a part summary and stuff. And I've used that with oil-based products as well as water-based. Water-based is a lot easier because you don't have to cut it down with anything, but the sprayer is still going after numerous jobs, and it was pretty cheap. And with that airless sprayer, I did numerous coats on the underside of the chairs first. I had them flipped over, sprayed the entire underside, let it dry in between shoots. I didn't do any sanding in between, though it does say to sand in between coats. I didn't do that. I just went ahead and sprayed. I had a really nice warm day, so it was drying really fast. So I went ahead and just did 3 coats on the bottom. I flipped them over and then did 3 coats right on top. It's not a super thick coat, but when you feel it, you can tell that it's completely coated. There isn't any exposed wood on this. It's definitely going to be able to protect against the elements, and that's something that you're going to want to recoat probably once a year, maybe be able to get one every 2 years, depending on sun and damage like that. But with that airless sprayer, I just went in stripes across each piece. So forward and back, kind of watching it as it adhered, spraying at an angle to make sure that I got in between here. You could also do a wipe on. I don't necessarily like the wipe on. You could certainly use a paintbrush as well to apply it, but I actually think the airless sprayer gets the best coverage, so that's what I went with, and that's what I typically do with any of my projects. After I was done with the poly coat, I let it dry for a few days just to make sure it was completely cured before putting those cushions on. And the entire goal of this was to be able to list them for sale. So these are not going to be for our house use. So staging it outside with the help of my wife, I placed it near my kiddo's playground and got several shots that I'm going to use for listing it. And then it's just a matter of coming up with a description and a price point that makes sense. When making that price point, you want to make sure that you account for all the materials used, the lumber, whatever went into that, the screws, the sanding discs, anything that you used. If you used glue, the stain, of course. The poly coat itself is pretty expensive. You could end up using easily $20 to $40 worth of poly, depending on how many coats you put on. So you want to make sure you account for that. Measure your can as you're spraying or wiping or whatever you're doing, but make sure you take into account how much you used. If you use the whole can, then certainly apply the whole can into the cost of the furniture. You want to add all those things setting your base price, and then how much is your time worth? So how much effort did you really put into it? These pieces actually took me quite a bit of time because these were all built from scratch. I didn't have plans or anything. I came up with every single piece. Now, had it been a plan that I had, they might have been quicker. But when you include the measurements, planning everything out, the cut list basically, so cutting everything and then assembly, sanding, staining, spraying, all of those things, that all goes into account when you're setting your price. And so if you're doing woodworking as a way to make an income, which I would love to be able to turn that around, right, and be able to pull an income directly from the pieces I'm making, what is my time worth? Now, given this is just lumber from a home improvement store, but with a lot of work, it turned out really nice. What do you think it would be worth? There's a lot of competition out there when you consider Costco with all their beautiful displays that they might have set up for you to sit in and try. But those are a pretty high dollar point, $2,000 plus potentially. Or your home improvement stores, they've always got big displays. Even your grocery stores might have them, and Amazon certainly has it, and they'll ship it straight to your door. So that's a big competition to deal with. One of those things that is tough to compete with is price, because a lot of that stuff's made out of just metal or cheap plastics, the wicker kind of stuff that they're making them with, and you have to be able to compete with that. But even those are $500, $600, $700. So I'm certainly going to be pricing these a little higher, definitely more towards what I think my time is worth and what I would like to get out of it. But what do you guys think is a good base point? Would you charge a 30% markup from materials? Would you do 50? But when you start considering these prices, you have to consider how much time you put into it. Once you come up with a price point that you're going to set something for, you got to subtract the materials and then divide it by the hours that you actually put into it. Is that how much your time's worth? Good Lord willing, I'm going to be able to take the items that I'm making, turn them into a provision for my family, and be able to continue doing this hobby that I enjoy. With that, I appreciate you guys watching my content. Please like and subscribe. Keep making sawdust, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks.